This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Man, I remember the days when we used to complain that the Browns didn't draft a lot of Ohio Staters like the Cincinnati Bengals do. Well, the Browns have drafted 2 Ohio Staters. It's got to be the first time they drafted multiple Ohio State players in a very long time. Like, certainly since I've been watching them, I don't think they've drafted a ton of them. Seems like everybody else in the division has drafted a lot of Ohio State players, but the Cleveland Browns, for whatever reason, have been not drafting Ohio State players. Also kills that, like, you know, that conspiracy theory that Andrew Berry will only draft players from the South. Like, that's dead. We got DeJuan Jones, we got Luke Wypler. I guess he just goes who's best on the board. You know what I mean? But let's talk about Luke Wypler. He was a surprise that he was there in the 6th round for the Cleveland Browns. And he's somebody a lot of people are really high on. Redshirt sophomore, so he's young. Only 3 years at Ohio State, 6'3", 303 pounds. I know that he wasn't drafted as early as Nick Harris, who was a 4th round pick. But this means that Nick Harris is gone. We'll touch on that more later, but Nick Harris is undersized and he's not quite the prospect that Luke Wypler is. For whatever reason, Luke Wypler fell. Now, he might have some injury things that are wrong with him, or maybe, you know, teams had some discrepancies on their board that led to this. Good players fall in the draft all the time. This might be the case here, but the production score 73, athleticism score 82, so pretty athletic for a tackle. Ran a pretty good 40 time at 5'1", a 1.83 split, which is pretty good. The Browns love athletic tackles in offensive linemen, period. Right? If you watch the Browns a lot, you know the staple of the Cleveland Browns is we like to pull them. Right? We like to get them up and get them and going. One of the things I think is going to be most interesting with DeJuan Jones is, man, imagine his big 400-pound butt pulling as an eligible tackle, getting a running start on a wide zone play. RIP whoever is going to be standing in the way of that, right? And that's what, like, the Browns like to do with this wide zone. These guys are going to get up, run. The conditioning needs to be good. The athleticism needs to be there. 29 in bench press, so really strong dude. What was his arms? Did he measure his arms? 31 and 5/8 inch arms, so he's not super long, but still very impressive athletically. He was one of Pro Football Focus's, like, top draft prospects at the center position. They really loved him. So it's interesting that he dropped. He was not just, and it's not just Pro Football Focus. I think a lot of people were really high on him coming out of the draft. For whatever reason, he fell. Again, it's not an exact science. Sometimes good players fall. Sometimes players fall for a good reason. But at center, I thought this was the right spot. You know, he wasn't, I liked Ola Latimi a little bit more than him, but I felt like they were in the same range of, hey, if you draft this guy, he's probably going to be a good center from you day one if you need it. But in a couple years, he's definitely going to be a starter for you. This is a similar situation for me. If you look at his draft profile on Pro Football Focus, he was one of the highest grade centers in the entire draft. It's the same story with all of these Ohio State guys. Really good grades until the last 2 games against Michigan and Georgia. It is what it is. Didn't really play that well against Michigan. Played fine against Georgia. You see the 63.4 grade. Those are going to be the 2 most important games that people are going to evaluate on. And I think that had a lot to do with why a lot of these Ohio State guys kind of fell unexpectedly, especially along the offensive line, was that Georgia and Michigan tape just ended up outweighing so much more of the body of work that these guys put up. And I think that outweighed everything for them, right? Even with Paris Johnson, he didn't play that well against Michigan and Georgia, but he was at least in that 60 to 70 range of grade there So I think if you didn't have an exceptionally great game against those playoff teams, a lot of teams kind of push you down the board, which I think is a bit unfair, right? Wisconsin had a lot of good players in the interior. He played really well against Wisconsin. You could look at the Iowa game. There was a lot of good prospects on that team. Penn State has a lot of good prospects. Northwestern had a lot of good prospects. The Big Ten was a lot better than most people give it credit for. I think some of these Ohio State guys, DeJuan Jones and Luke Wypler included, kind of failed because people really only put a lot of stock into those last two games that they played. But I think a lot of the failure on that part has more to do with Ryan Day than it really did the talent on the team. And even then with Georgia, they were the only team that came close to beating Georgia this year. So interesting. I think this is a steal, a certified steal here to get Luke Wypler this late. Again, you're talking about somebody who is ranked within the top 100 in most people's boards, and you get him here at 192. You can't call that anything else but a steal. You also, look, if there are any developmental questions with somebody this young, again, he's what, 21, about to be 22 to start the season. The Browns are the perfect place to draft guys like this, right? And I like that the Browns have realized this about themselves. They're the team, much like the Cowboys back in the day, they're the team that has the luxury of taking chances on highly ranked players who are dropping because they might not be ready right now, right? They did it with DeJuan Jones. They came back on the same offensive line and grabbed Luke Wypler. And the reason that they are in that position is because they have really good players on that offensive line to help these guys along if they have to play early. They have really good players already there, so these guys don't have to play early. And they have one of the best coaches to help them develop. All of these combined makes you a pretty attractive place to develop offensive linemen, which the Cleveland Browns have been. Now, if you look at Luke Wypler's situation, hey, Ethan Posick is here. You're not going to be asked to play year one. You're going to be asked to beat out Nick Harris and Camp, which you'll probably do, and hold down the backup job, but that's about it. The year after, you might be asked to start, but hey, it's okay. Joe Bitonio is going to be on one side. Wyatt Teller's going to be on the other side. You don't have much to worry about. The center position is an easy one for the Browns to develop because the ease of use for that player is so simple. They don't have to worry about everything else that most centers have to worry about. They just have to worry about what's in front of them. And when that's your job, your life's easier, right? Ultimately, with the Browns, like most of the checks go through Joe Bitonio before anybody else. That's been that way for a very long time. Joe's the most senior offensive lineman on this team. He's the one the checks have to go through. Like, does he have to do the mic point? Yes, but that's fairly elementary compared to what most guys have to do. He's not the one having to call out coverages, all that. That's Joe Bitonio that does that on this offensive line. You don't have to worry about that. If you're worried about a big ass 3-tech sliding over on you, we got Wyatt Teller there for that reason, one of the strongest guards in football, to make sure that that doesn't happen to you or that you can at least stack that guy, right? So your life becomes much simpler, and it's why we saw Ethan Posick play pretty well here despite him not having good seasons before, is because when you're in between those two all-pro players, your life is so much easier. Now you have somebody who is considered a top 100 prospect being put in what is a top 5 situation for an interior offensive lineman to develop. And I think you have something that's going to be pretty impressive here, right? You look at his zone blocking grade. It's pretty impressive, 86.4. We know the Browns love the zone block. His true pass blocking grade, 82.4 in college. Pretty good there. Run block grade, 81. He's going to be a good pick for this team, and he might end up being the most valuable pick out of this draft. I call this a certified steal. I absolutely love this pick. You have depth on that offensive line. You have a future at center. It's a way to get cheaper. Again, you look at the Browns and you're starting to see the blueprint of not only the offense, but the blueprint of the future and what they plan to do here at the offensive line position, which is get cheaper. They need to get cheaper, right? Jets' 5th-year option is not going to be cheap. They just brought in Jack Conklin on another 2-year deal and then brought in Ethan Posick on what is a 1+3 deal. So you need to get cheaper, right? Joe Batonio's not going to be there forever. Wyatt Teller's not going to be there forever, but they're already signed for a long time here for the next couple of years. So you can worry about them next year. Where you needed to find some solutions was tackle, center. You have the prospect James Hudson. We'll see how they feel about him, but you have him. That was a guy that you invested in. Maybe he's ready, maybe he's not. You have DeJuan Jones now, who's a prospect you're going to start developing this year. Now you're looking at replacements for one of the tackle positions at the very least, if not both of the tackle positions. And look, it might not even be because the quality of tackle play is bad. It might just be because the tackle play is expensive and you want to have a plan to replace it and get cheaper. Now you have guys in late round picks who can replace that. And you have somebody who could come in, I believe next year, as early as this year, and take over that center position and probably play well, because we're not worried about the same size and weight concerns that we had with Nick Harris, where Nick Harris came into the league at 600 pounds and like 280. Well, not 600, 6 foot tall, 290 pounds, where I was just much too small to play center in the NFL. And he ended up having to play guard and all that, and just ended up not being great for him. This is somebody who's going to be able to come in. I think his role this year is going to be able to push for number 2, maybe even push for 1 if he has an exceptionally great camp. We're seeing what the change is. We're seeing what the Browns want to do on the offensive line, and we're seeing what the plan is to get cheaper. I think they're ecstatic that they got him at 192. And that's part of the reason why I don't think they picked after that, right? I think they felt like we got it, jackpot, uno, whatever you want to call it. Let's get out of here and let's work on UDFA, and it'll be interesting to see who they get at UDFA. But that's my thoughts on this pick. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.